But there was something that Yuki from White Conduit Projects in London wanted me to say, just to emphasize the fact that the exhibition that is going to be referred to tonight is the second part of a two-part project, Sense. And in the press release, there's this rather nice excerpt, a kind of quotation, which I'm going to read to you now, because it has a bearing on the presentations that you're going to hear, and I think what you'll sort of pick up probably for a conversation later on. So you quote from André Gide in your press release, the fruits of the earth. He says to his reader, throw this book away and go outside. And then, following this, the Japanese avant-garde poet and artist Shuji Terayama published Throw Away Your Books and Rally in the Streets, advocating a departure from institutionalized knowledge and an embrace of the outdoors, something these artists share. And also Tracy Hill, who was part one of your two-part project. I mean, she, subscribed completely to that proposition. Terayama encourages seeking recognition and creativity rooted in real-life experiences, emphasizing that ideas are meaningless unless they engage the senses. So, with that said and quoted, passing on now to Masako. Thank you very much.
Okay, I will start from behind the screen now. Okay, good evening. Thank you for coming tonight. It was really lovely to see you. And thank you to Kyoto-san, the Wind Society, for organizing this event, and to Jonathan for handling moderating. Before we start, I'm afraid I'm not great at English, so I'd just like to say thank you for your patience. And please don't be afraid to help me out if I guess. With that said, let's get started. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Masako Yasuki. I'm a contemporary painter based in Kyoto. As you know, some of my works are currently exhibited at White Conduit Projects in India, where Yuki regularly organizes amazing Anglo-Japanese projects. So it's an honor to exhibit at Yuki's gallery. Thank you, Yuki. And Hamish. It's also a great honor to have an opportunity to exhibit with you, an artist I've admired for a long time, ever since I was a student. Now I'd love to show you some of my work pictures and introduce you to my work. I do landscape in the broad sense of the term. All my works are in some sense landscape, but in inverted commas. And all the landscapes I paint are actual places I have been to. By the way, you can't see the screens at all.
Well, we can see your screen.
Oh, you can go.
But we could might stand up later on. What do you think?
Yeah, when Hamish talks, I'm probably go there and see it. What is
We're with you.
Oh, but you haven't got the chairs.
No,
Okay, so what I said. Okay. And all my landscapes I paint are actual places I have been to. In some way or another, they also relate to the themes of society, the environment, and nature. By doing this, I intend them to comment on the reality of the human condition in the world we have made within the world. So, with this stance in mind, now I'd like to briefly introduce my 4 major series of works. There are cityscapes, natural landscapes, works in gold leaf, and scroll paintings. I'll say a little bit about each series in turn. Let's start with the first series, Cityscapes. This is a painting from my obliterated brown series of Cityscapes. All the paintings in this series are based on the real cities which have been totally destroyed, mostly reborn, and redeveloped, and consequently have changed in appearance. Typically, I put several layers into one painting. The first layer is an image of the city immediately after it was bombed. Second, image of the train city now as it physically appears in front of me from many different viewpoints. And finally, I incorporate photos, charcoal rubbings of the actual ground which I myself have taken in and around the city. Photos, rubbing the actual ground tells me a lot about varied memories of the city. You can see even people's faces appearing from the ground, like that. When I'm rubbing the ground with a piece of charcoal, local people are often interested in what I'm doing and come up to talk. So taking photos provides me with opportunities to listen to stories and memories of people who live in the city I'm painting. Some have even kindly shown me old pictures they have. These conversations then are an invaluable part of my research. I often collect soil and minerals, even the ceramics which people in the city used to use from the places. It takes more than 6 months, sometimes years, to complete one big painting. I usually use egg tempera with pigment, including soil and bits of rubble from old bricks. I collect them in the places I'm painting, and grind them down to make a powder. They give not only their own unique technique and color to the painting, they let us connect to the city and people's life there. Okay, turning next to natural landscapes, the Forest and Nature series. In this series, I paint places that are hospitable for people to live in. This particular painting is of a big old tree deep in the mountains of northeast Japan. I visited this tree many times over several years because I wanted to show how it appeared with the progress of time in different seasons, at different time of day, and in different kind of weather. This painting is based on the forest in Fukushima. Fukushima is the area where the nuclear accident happened. After the huge earthquake and tsunami in 2011, no matter what mistakes people make, the forest is sitting there. When I paint forests or trees, I often use the rocks and soil in the area to make them pure. tempera is, of course, a rather old-fashioned and bothersome way to producing pigment and time-consuming method of applying color to the canvas. But that's part of the point. It makes me slow down and really think about what I'm doing. Here is another painting of this series. This is a Canadian lake. I used wet minerals from the place. I've done Scottish forest as well. I felt like I was touching a memory of the earth when I was walking on it. I often combine both Japanese pigments and Western pigments when making tempera, as well as soil and minerals in the places. The third series is works in bold leaf. I started this series because I wanted to take a totally uncontrolled leap into a physical experience of the Eastern world. Here are some works in my pine tree series. The pine trees you see here are actually negative space left where the gold leaf has come off. To achieve this effect, I first applied glue to all parts of the canvas, except where the trees would be. Then I covered the entire canvas with gold leaf. After that, I left it to stand and dry for several weeks in my studio. During this time, the gold leaf that was not stuck firmly with glue gradually started to come off and began peeling away by itself. In this way, I used the passage of time to help me complete the painting. What we are left with is the outline of a memory of the trees that were once there. Well, in Japan, pine trees are often planted on border between areas inhabited by the living and those generally not. So you often see them, for instance, along the coastline on the border between land and sea, between controlled and uncontrolled nature areas like that. They also often appear on the boundary between the world inhabited by people and the places occupied by some sort of nature god, separating the secular world from the sacred space. In recent years, I have started to collaborate with video artists to incorporate projection mapping into my gold leaf paintings. By combining ancient and modern techniques in this way, I aim to start a kind of dialogue between the past and present to open the path of communication with the ancient arts and prompt reflection of humanity's current relationship with technology. Now, finally, I'd like to talk about my school paintings. The pine trees you saw in my gold leaf paintings are based on drawings that I made on long scrolls of paper while walking along the coastline. My coastline scroll series began in 2011, the year of the Great East Japan earthquake and tsunami. I started to walk along the coastline with horizontal scrolls of paper and randomly drew whatever caught my eyes along the way, one thing after another. Unlike usual sketching, where the artist cut something out the world, from static subjective perspective. This type of sketching on a long piece of paper is more like act of improvisation. Walking along through the sea breeze reduces me to a less significant presence in nature. I feel more part of it, immersed in it. This gives me the feeling of generating the painting together with the landscape. Unframed landscape, not a peninsula school painting, is the latest work in my coastline school series, created while walking along Japan's Noto Peninsula in March this year. Noto is a peninsula that was hit by a major earthquake in January 2023. This majestic coastline lined with cliffs is dominated by rugged, uplifted rock faces. I walked along the coastline in a strong wind coming and going, applying my brush to whatever I saw along the way, sometimes pressing the paper against the rock or crack in the earth, and at other times rubbing pigment into the paper as I went. This series is mainly painted in monochrome and has a character that is reminiscent of Eastern ink painting. These paintings are down from right to left, like in the tradition of Eastern schools. I think the scroll format is a very effective way of addressing the world that cannot be framed and nature that cannot be controlled. So, as I hope I have shown, all my works arise from my personal physical experiences of the art, an approach which I believe has some similarities with Hamish. Hamish, of course, always followed the rules, leave only footprints, and take only photographs. While I bent a little bit to take rubbings and sometimes stone, but I can still see the influence he had on me as a student running through my work today. So, thank you again for Hamish. And thank you for listening to my talk in the Stanford. So we'll probably swap the seat.
Masako, thank you very much for that talk, because just in these few minutes I learned so much more about your attitude and your practice. So thank you, it was enlightening. I'd like to thank the Japan Society for this occasion. I'd like to thank Yuki for the exhibition and Kyoko for organizing this event, and Jonathan for being the moderator. So before I talk about anything on these images, I have 18 images. Before I say anything about the images, I just want to clarify the fact that I am what I call a walking artist. That means if I don't walk, I can't make any art. And that may sound very simple, but it includes a whole lot of art that I cannot make and don't want to. In other words, I could be a walking artist and I could also be an abstract sculptor. So I'm not a sculptor that makes abstract sculptures. I'm not a painter of abstract paint. I only make art that comes from my own personal experiences. On this image, we see what I had to get help from people to write certain questions and get information from people as I was making walks in Japan, because I can neither speak, read, or write Japanese. and Masako can speak very good English.
Yeah.
But what happened for me was that in the early 80s, throughout the 80s, I worked with a really excellent gallery called Canrancha, and I worked with Mr. and Mrs. Otani, and they were really like the sort of the best, highest quality, highest level of gallery that you can imagine in terms of their organization and their willingness to tolerate the things that I was interested in, because you have the whole business of I'm coming from here and I'm going to Japan, and when I was a student way 100 years ago, back in 1964, what happened was that I was influenced by Japanese haiku, and of course endless Zen Buddhism, Zen, and then was also influenced by Taoism, the statements of Lao Tzu. These are all very, very small, shrunk, reduced, and brevity, brief statements, which were really very appealing in relation to, let's say, not wanting to have any information or knowledge or anything about Italian Renaissance paintings. So when you come to Japanese Enso paintings, one circle, one mark, one line, which of course indicates the state of the mind of the painter. So it's not so simple at all. In fact, it's highly skilled, highly sophisticated. But anyway, so the Otanis were very understanding of this sort of my strange English ideas for what I wanted to do in Japan. So this is really quite a big point, really, that they were very tolerant and extremely helpful. If I had any question, Mr. Otani was immediately looking straight into his colleague in Wakayama to ask and get the answer for, is it possible to have 7 tiers on a pagoda? So this was really a great tribute throughout the whole of the 80s and into the beginning of the 90s. Thank you. And so this is a wall painting I made back in Europe, and it regards 3 4-day walks that I made on Hokkaido. And when I was in England, my original idea was to go first to nature on Hokkaido. Hokkaido is the northern island, and it has a Siberian climate. And so I went to, these are sort of surrounding walks, but I also went to a place called Daisetsuzan National Park, which is in the middle of Hokkaido, which has a volcanic area with lots of snow even in the summer. The key word, the very first word, is Ainu. Ainu were the indigenous peoples of Japan, and they live on the Hokkaido. So I wanted to acknowledge their existence by giving their first name. The indigenous peoples of Hokkaido, the Ainu, are interestingly related to the people of the Northwest United States and Canada. They have connections to the Athabascan people. So, and sometimes when you see photographs of the heads, the faces of the Ainu, and then you see the head, the face, maybe taken many years ago, but of the Tlingit people, then you can see this kind of cultural, visual connection. So this is basically, speaking out, everything I have to say has to go very quickly. I can miss many points. This is sort of like 4 pieces of rope with knots tied for each day. In 1988, I had the idea to walk across Honshu, the main island. So I walked from Toyama Bay across the country to Suruga Bay. And this is, I think it's taken from Senjo-daki, and this is Fuji. So what my idea was to walk from one coast to the other coast, and then between, then to walk to the top of Ontake, and then walk to the top of Fuji. So Ontake erupted in 2014, but in 1988, very long time ago, there was no problem. There was a lot of cloud, and I remember speaking to an old man who'd got white hair. He had white hair, and I said to him very early in the morning, 5 o'clock, with sign language, when is the cloud all going to disappear? And he just went, 6 o'clock, and and 6 o'clock, all the cloud gone. So because the issue was in being able to go down the slope in the snow from Ontake, continuing on in the direction of Fuji. So when I arrived at the top of Fuji, on the crater rim of Fuji, then I was the only other, there's only one other person and myself, so only 2 people on the crater rim towards the end of May in 1988. So now today in July, August, I read something like 300,000 were going up and down. So it's really radically different. Also a completely different era. One thing that's really important to mention, which is totally different from the way we live today, which is that there were no mobile phones. So I'm English, I can't read, write, or speak Japanese, but I had that little notebook at the beginning to sort of show people. So you just set off for 19 days, not knowing anything about where you can sleep that night. So in the way we live today, that seems kind of like crazy or impossible. But then, because the Japanese people are so generous and open, then I could walk into a village, knock on a door, I see some kind of resemblance of a sign that I could figure, and then you come in and you have a place to stay for the night. One place I went into where you go in the entrance and you see the shoes of all the other guests on the one side, and on the other side you see the slippers that you're supposed to wear when you go inside. So when I met the old lady who ran this small inn, she pointed like, I took my boots up, put the slippers on, and then she took my boots as though they were like the most disgusting things in the world, and she placed them outside on the pavement. And I thought, oh no, this is basically like losing your car keys and so the next morning the boots were in exactly the same place. So it's a pavement with people walking up and down, kids, dogs, people, cars going by. The boots were there all night. So on the left of the screen, this is Ontake, and that's the first volcano that I came from, and this view is a bit later on in the dawn on Fuji. Ontake is about 10,000 feet with more than that, and Fuji is a bit more than 12,000 feet. And so then I just came down the other side of Fuji and then continued on to Suruga Bay in the end, where you can't really see very much because there's so much pollution. You can turn around and face and look up to where Fuji should be. It's not very far away, but you can't actually see it at all. This is a walk in 1989, making it on Hokkaido again, and this was more like a real camping walk. So what I say is that I'm a walking artist and I'm not a land artist. And so the practice that I follow, the philosophy that I follow, is the philosophy and practice of leave no trace. So you can imagine that if you're a land artist, you have to change nature and leave a trace. With my practice, I don't touch it. When I've finished camping, I try to make it look like it wasn't there, and then I continue. This is one wall painting concerning 3 walks, where I simply linked up the footprints from the end of one walk and made the next walk, so going on and then finishing. So from one coast to the other, but taking many years, but with the idea that the one journey direction could be made in these 3 parts, where I would go back a few years later and sort of recognize some mark on the pavement where I'd been before. So that was a sort of linking. Sometimes people told me that actually in Japanese it doesn't quite match the 3 words I thought in English, but apparently it's kind of near enough. No, that's it. I have to. This is where I'll say a few things about this area. So this is called the Hiyoshi Jinja stone, which is on, it's actually the bottom of Mount Hiei. But anyway, regarding back to thinking about how great it was to work with the Otani Gallery, the Karancha Gallery, I've heard about the Marathon monks of Mount Hiei in England, so that when I went to Kyoto, because here is northeast of Kyoto. And the reason I wanted to go there was that, having read about these marathon monks who are absolutely extraordinary, I wanted to actually go to where they walk, and they also run as well, and they walk and run in the night. Some people regard them as the world's greatest athletes. But I've been to Mexico, and I've been where the Tarahumara runners live. They're sort of similar, but this is absolutely extraordinary athleticism, but from the position of Tendai Buddhism. So here, I'll be, there's too much to say and not so much time, but yeah. So here we are. So this is the 7 years. They make Senichi Kaikogyo, 1,000-day circumambulation of Mount Hiei. And these are the years. And this is the 7th year, which I like. And then here we have 100 days, one after the other, of 84 kilometers a day. So can you imagine 100 days every day, the next day another 8, another 8 for 100 days. This is to me, this is absolutely incredible. So I thought this was very extraordinary. But then when I was working with some other people, nothing to do with the Kanracha Gallery, and I was at a talk, I was speaking about different ideas on the tour in Japan, then the person who was organizing the talk said to me, "Don't mention the marathon monks. Just keep quiet. Just forget them. Leave it. Talk about something else." So afterwards I had to inquire, what's the problem? And so the problem was, for this contemporary person, younger person, contemporary person, was the association of the marathon monks to the emperor. So he didn't like the fact that the marathon monks had something to do with the imperial world. Maybe perhaps some people in Britain are for the monarchy or against the monarchy. Maybe it's a little bit similar. But this didn't touch me at all. I had no interest in not being impressed. I was incredibly impressed. And so one day, when I was going around, I would concede them. Yeah, this is sort of like the map of the wall. It's got different parts to it. But anyway, one day when I was going around, I was going past one of the temples, because there were quite a few temples that you passed by, and there was a young monk sweeping. Of course, they're all sweepingly, and so he said, what am I doing? And I explained what I was doing. I'm an artist and so on. He said, "Oh, come inside. I have some tea." So he gave me some tea, and he said, "Come upstairs." We went upstairs to meditation room hall, great big long hall with all the cushions. And he said, "I will show you this documentary about my master, who is a man by the name Sakai." And Sakai was not alive anymore, but the greatest post-war marathon monk, who kind of he did the 1,000 days. He had a break for 6 months and then embarked on another 1,000 days. So just these are human beings who do things where you part company with both training and what you eat. So a modern athlete, you have to watch out for the training, so many hours sleep, certain kinds of food, certain rest periods. This is way beyond. This is into another league altogether. This is really where it's going, where the mind is energizing the whole body. I would say it's the fate of Tendai Buddhism, because at the end of the 1,000 days, some of the monks have 9 days where they're in meditation for 9 days. Mostly they can't lie down, they can't drink, and they can't eat. So every day as they come out of this hall, then they're all health friends at night time, and you can see it on films, documentary films, and they're just managing. They can just manage to get to the well for the water. Anyway, when they drink the water, and then they have to spit it out so they don't swallow it. They just moisten their mouth. That's not the thing. So this is then they walk on the Mount here, where bring one way with the arm disappearing, and then anyways, I did 5 days either side of the moon. I said Nikko, and I made 7 one-day walks in Nikko on this kind of old park there with all of the giant cedar trees, and it's very, very Japanese appearance. You know exactly which country and where you are. But of course, as you can see, I understand it was very, very wet. It was raining every day. But again, another wonderful experience. Then another important kind of aspect of the visits that I've had the great privilege of making in Japan. This one is 1994, and I worked at the CCA, the Center for Contemporary Art in Kyushu, in Japan. And it's going back in time, back to 1967, 2nd of February 1967, I made with other students from St. Martin's, we made a group walk from St. Martin's, which used to be 109 Charing Cross Road, out to Radcliffe, out in the countryside. We ended it in Farmer's Field. So it's that kind of idea of a group of people involved in a walk, and also changing perceptions about the walk, and also changing perceptions of being in this group. So we went up and down from sea level in the month of August, which was the hottest August since 1945. And so you came out of the university building, and by the time you've gone 100 meters, you're completely, totally soaked in perspiration. But what we did was we walked from sea level up 622 meters up to the top of a small hill called Sarakura, which is in Kyushu. And we went up and down. We were making these repeat walks for 1 week, for 7 days. But after a few days, I thought, this isn't working, and nothing's happened too much. So then I said, now we're going to start going up in the afternoon as well. So I went up in the morning, come back down, eat, go back up in the afternoon, come back down. And this started to work. This started to have an effect on all of us. People were becoming quite impacted by this experience. And all sorts of extremely funny things where they're not students, they're called participants. So they're staying somewhere, and they said, "Wow, you go into the building and it's just all socks drying on washing lines." And so this is Masako Kuda, and she lives in London. I don't think she's here. So there were 14 of us that went up and down Sarakura. And it was a really fantastic experience. And in fact, what happened on the last evening was that it was dark, because this was our second time, and it was the 10th time, the last time. We came down into Yahata, and on the small road leading to the main road, on the one side there was a small restaurant, and we were all thirsty and hungry. So we went into the restaurant, and the owner just kind of looked at so many 15 people going into a small restaurant. He locked the door so no more customers could come in. And one of the maybe even this guy being a school teacher, and he's also a chef, a cook. So he just went immediately behind the counter, and he turned into the chef. So things like that where normal behavior is broken down, perceptions are broken down, you feel changed. And this is really part of the walking experience. Yeah, in 1995, I walked across the Key Peninsula, which was a wonderful walk. I went up 3 hills, Koyasan, Omine, and Vodai Gahara, and I also went into this place called the Miyagawa Gorge, and this is the Miyagawa Gorge going through here. It looks a bit like Nepal. Actually, it's a Key Peninsula, and that was a wonderful solo walk. I made a second walk across the Key Peninsula, this time taking 21 days, because I wanted to visit, in the course of going from the one coast to the other, to visit all of these absolutely amazing historical places that you can visit on the way, and then of course ending at the Isa Shrine, which is extraordinary building. Is it every 25 years that they burn it?
Yeah, you have to change the names every
25.
Yeah, more than 25 years for 20. No. Yes, and
They build Yeah, so this is this so many extraordinary things that you can you learn about, find out about. So every 25 years, Isa Shrine is burned to the ground, and then the carpenters rebuild it. And the carpenters have skills which are to do with all the blocks, all the joints, all constructed without nails and no glue. So so the skill is extraordinary, and it happens every 25 years. But anyway, so actually, what happened was at the end of that walk in 1996, I met Roger Ackling, a good friend, artist from England, at the Isa Shrine, and then afterwards, we started to work on our exhibition at the Museum of Modern Art in Wakayama. Roger had a sense of humor, but he doesn't look like he doesn't look like he told a joke lately. But I just want to say something about reading about, I have to say, 17th century Japanese humor. Okay, 17th century. So the story is in relation to Roger liking humor. So a man, can you believe it, goes in search of a jar. He says, got to find a jar, like a jam jar. So he walks into a shop and he says to the storekeeper, I'd like to buy a jar. Do you have any jars? And the storekeeper says, yes, yeah, of course, we've got plenty. Come over here. There they are, all laid out on a shelf. So the man looks at it, shaking his head. He picks up the jar and he goes, no. Look, and taps it. Look, no hole in the top, and look, a big hole in the bottom. You can't hold it. So he does. More from more recently, 2018. So Shikoku is a place that has, whether it is 88 shrines, but I didn't embark on that. I just went from one place to another place twice a day. So I went out, turn around, come back, out, turn around, come back, because I had people organized a fantastic hotel, more of it, sort of like a low budget traditional hotel, not a high class ryokan. So it was a wonderful going on this old pilgrimage route, and you go past giant cryptomeria trees, cedar trees, and then continuing on another branch of my interest and influence from traditional Japanese art as opposed to electronic art. The great Japanese poet Santoka Tanada, who died in 1940, created really extremely minimal haiku, which even today seem extraordinary because they're so reduced. But unlike Basho was sort of the Shakespeare of Japan, but much shorter. Haiku, I think, is totally great art form. And anyway, Santoka went to Shikoku as well. So it was also part of the thing. Yeah. Okay. This is the last image, and this is sort of what this old path looks like, completely filled with dried leaves. So in one part, you have cedar, then maple, bamboo, so all of the great Japanese bushes, trees, and giant trees, plants. So it's half finding its way through the middle of all of this nature. And so the nature is really after you've done many of these walks, so both for 2 weeks, and so I do it 28 times. So that the sort of the way that it all goes into your head, you don't have to try. There's no effort. You're not working at it. But after some time, maybe in the evening the light's changing, or there's some mist, or the leaves are a bit redder this time. So it's all kind of things affecting the mind in a way that are not affecting the land itself. So it's a different relationship from a land artist who in theory can never be satisfied with what they see. They have to change it. In this case, I'm looking and I'm feeling things are going into my mind that I'm not working at, that I'm not controlling. And through tiredness, through exhaustion, then more things can just drift in that you didn't imagine before, let's say. So this was a wonderful experience, wonderful walk. When I finish now, thank you very much.
Well, we have about 10 minutes. I've got a couple of questions which may have occurred to you, and they're quick ones. I'm going to come right here so that I can see what you saw them. First question to Masako. Masako, and in relation to the quotation, André Gide and the Teriyama that was being referred to at the start of the press release, there's insistence on sort of direct engagement with the world. You are on your hands and knees making a frottage. You stand in front of a row of pine trees. You don't take a photograph. You draw it, and then you transfer that to the canvas. There's a work in the exhibition which is a very small one, and not illustrated here, but it's quite interesting. A piece of clay that you push into the landscape, and then you have an impression. It's almost like you're taking a small cast of the world, and then you paint it gold. There we are. Okay. And so I just wondered, to what extent is this aspiration to direct us a critique of modern technology?
I'm interested in art itself, so I have to touch it. That's why I have to do things directly. And this one is one of those figures into my attitude directly appears in a way.
But are you arguing against technology if in your work? Is it just your way?
I'm not sure I create my own way or not, but all the things are technology, I think. Even the paintings, even the touching the ground is technology. That's what I always think about.
That's it. Okay, now a question for Hamish. The very first image you showed us was a work that was derived from your experiences in Hokkaido, and you make reference to the Ainu culture, and then subsequent work by you has made reference to First Nation societies and communities. And I wondered, why, what is important from your point of view that when it comes to engaging with First Nation or Aboriginal culture?
And so I think that feeling would be the first. For me, it's the first feeling in my work. I went with Nancy in 1969 to the American West, and went to the Badlands, Pine Ridge, Oglala, Lakota Reservation, to Wounded Knee, and all of these things are very, very powerful because it's a huge subject. I mean, currently you have this issue of that the Black Hills are not for sale. So, and the Indigenous peoples wanting to retain the land, which was actually technically their land in the first place. And so you have that struggle going on today from the mid 1800s to today.
And it feeds into environmentalist proposition, I think.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm not explaining it very well because I'm so kind of obsessed with the subject matter that I forget how difficult it is to convey it to other people. But if you take U.S. land art, or the famous examples in the American West, you get the title of the artwork, but it doesn't tell you Shoshone Paiute. It doesn't tell you who the original people were, but whose land is this? Because the greatness of the United States is based on land theft.
Yeah, no, I think I'm going to, we have an opportunity to sort of get up and walk around. And getting back to this whole question of directness, you have been, the mediation of the screen has been a bit of a feature tonight. But it's a chance, actually, and I know Masako and Hamish very open to the idea of, having sort of meeting you individually, within the convivial nature of this extraordinary whiskey bar. So that's a walking libre, something. I will say to some. Anyway, just to say, thank you very much to Japan Society. Whose idea was to put Hamish and Masako together, I think. Thanks, Steve, but also to Hamish also that much. Thank you very much.